Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and if you're watching this video on the day that it releases, then I have great news for you. The Open Great League returns today. We had kind of a rough week in terms of cups with the Master League and Spring Cup, but I'm very excited that Great League will be returning. Today's video should be incredible, as today we have an absolute mad lad who, after hitting Legend in the Open Great League, decided to unleash a Shadow Hundo Timber on the Great League to terrifying results. Now, it goes without saying, don't use Shadow Timber if you care about your elo, but with Low Kick, Brick Break, and Rock Tomb, this Pokemon caught some leaderboard trainers off guard. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1, we see a pretty negative lead, Tentacruel into Shadow Mightyena. One acid and a safe switch into Shadow Primeape, and Primeape is going to be answered with Togekiss. Now, Togekiss doesn't know if Primeape has Ice Punch or not, and that's going to force the opponent to put up a shield. Togekiss looking for a farm down, but Primeape able to make a second Rage Fist. This Rage Fist is going to be shielded up as well, and this Togekiss is down 2 shields, but this energy is going to go everywhere. In comes Tentacruel. This team is triple weak to Psychic. Unfortunately, Psyshock hits for devastating damage on every single Pokemon. Shield comes up as Psyshock number 2 comes through from the Togekiss. Tentacruel trying to reach for the Scald, but there's a pivot out as Empoleon is revealed as the final Pokemon. In comes Shadow Timber, but I imagine a Drill Peck would eviscerate Timber, so Timber is forced to put up the shield. Timber's gonna farm up, winning charge attack priority over Empoleon. Timber fires off the Brick Break. Brick Break takes the knockout, and back in comes Togekiss. Togekiss over farming. They don't respect the Timber, and that's gonna cost them. They thought the Timber didn't have a coverage move. They were wrong. Rock Tomb takes the knockout. In comes Mightyena. Mightyena does not get the farm down, and the toxic Mightyena team goes down. Brick Break KOs Mightyena, and that's a good game. Hopping into game number 2, leading Tentacruel into Clodsire. This, I imagine, is a pretty solid lead for the Tentacruel, because Earthquake shouldn't one-shot, and Tentacruel does have a pretty clear pacing advantage over Clodsire. Tentacruel is going to look to strike first, Scald is going to connect, and Scald does actually get a debuff. If Earthquake was survivable before, it definitely is now. Easy no-shield from the Tentacruel, and an aggressive pivot into the Shadow Primeape. Shadow Primeape can't quite take a knockout from this range with Rage Fist, so Primeape is just going to look to shield up and farm up as much energy as possible. Opponent sends in a Shadow for Alligator, and Primeape's going for broke, unleashing Close Combat. Close Combat takes the knockout, and for Alligator gets KO'd. In the back is a shiny Galarian Moltres, and this is a devious bait. Primeape has already showed the Close Combat, baiting with the Rage Fist, getting the shield, and now a boosted Close Combat is on its way. This should be forcing the final shield away from the opponent, and then it's time, send in the Shadow Timber. Shadow Timber hits the field, Moltres fires off the fly, but it really feels like the Moltres is in an unwinnable position. Timber reaching for the Rock Tomb, making it to the Rock Tomb, and that should be game over. Rock Tomb KOs the Moltres, in comes Clodsire, opponent sees the writing on the wall, and concedes the match. We move to game number 3, and unfortunately, Tentacruel is once again greeted by Mightyena. A safe switch into Shadow Primeape answered with Wigglytuff. It's all going wrong so far, but Shadow Primeape has a trick up its sleeve. It's running Close Combat. Close Combat connects. Wigglytuff gets one shot, and switch advantage has been won. That is massive. Back in comes the Mightyena. Mightyena gets the farm down just to get stunted on by Shadow Timber. In comes Shadow Timber. Mightyena flailing as it fires off this Poison Fang. But these low kicks are adding up quite a bit. Can a full farm down occur? Yes, it can. Whatever's in back is getting debuffed. It's a Steelix, and this team is just getting eviscerated by Shadow Timber. Brick Break is shielded, but Timber is not done. Steelix not gonna quit yet, but there is just no way out. They are now double debuffed. There's a pivot into the Tentacruel. Unfortunately, the Timber was actually gonna get farmed down, but this is a -2 defense Steelix. There's just nothing they can do. Tentacruel getting ever closer to the game-winning Scald. The Steelix will be able to pressure a shield with the Psychic Fangs, but with no ability to catch and reset that -2 defense drop, this game is over. Mightyena Wigglytuff Steelix, and they just got destroyed by Shadow Timber. Great lead in the next match, Tentacruel into Carbink. Carbink does have a pretty poor matchup here across the board, because even though Rock Slide does hit for some solid neutral damage, Scald is deadly. Scald lands big damage and getting the Scald debuff as well to add insult to injury. And the Carbink overfarms way too much, and they play to a CMP tie that they do not win. Now they're forced to go down a shield, and for Tentacruel, this is a very easy no shield. I imagine we will see a pivot out here, and we do. In comes Primeape. Primeape gonna be answered with Medicham, but this Medicham is down a shield, and that is very bad news for the opponent. Rage Fist connects, that's devastating damage. The Psycho Cuts add up quite a bit, but Primeape is even able to outpace the speedy Medicham. Medicham just goes for the Ice Punch. Primeape gonna overfarm, trying to go for the CMP type, and Medicham not gonna fall for it. But Medicham's gonna have to put up the final shield, or they're gonna end up losing their entire Medicham. They go for the Ice Punch, the double shield from Primeape. Unfortunately, all shields are down. That could make life tough for the Timber in the back. Rage Fist will be the end of Medicham, and this is a very heavily boosted Primeape. Opponent sends in their final Mon. It's Meowscarada. Meowscarada farms down, but pays a very heavy price. In comes Tentacruel just to force energy, and then, as always, it's going to be the Shadow Timber show. Frenzy Plant takes the knockout, in comes Timber. Timber gets the low kick down. All they have left is the Carbink, and Carbink is going to fall to a Shadow Timber. All these trainers running toxic fast move pressure teams. Timber just taking out the trash and getting these wins. Now this is not a toxic fast move pressure heavy Mon in the next match. This is Tentacruel into Jellicent. Jellicent arguably is one of the most flexible Pokemon out there, as its insanely quick pacing to Shadow Ball makes it a threat in just about every matchup. Shadow Ball no shielded by Tentacruel. Tentacruel gonna look to hit back hard with the Payback. Payback is gonna be shielded, and immediately Primeape hits the field. Primeape not going to throw the Rage Fist right away because Rage Fist will not pick up the one-hit knockout. Instead, going to put up the shield. It's a Surf from the Jellicent, and that is a very smart Surf because Surf will allow them to reach another Surf and outpace the Primeape and potentially force that final shield. And the opponent still hasn't revealed their back two Pokemon, so all shields down is a very scary prospect. But Primeape should be able to double up now. The Jellicent cannot afford to shield, and there's going to be a very heavily boosted Primeape with a full charge stack loaded versus whatever they have in the back. Opponent sends in a Volt Switch Fortress. The bait comes out from the Primeape. This is a very big risk, but the risk pays off. Fortress puts up the shield and loses charge attack priority. This is going to be a one-hit knockout. This is a very heavily boosted close combat. That takes the KO. In the back is Diggersby. The opponent can't believe their eyes. Their Diggersby is getting torn to smithereens by Timber. Timber lands the Brick Break. Opponent realizes there's no point in playing, and they will concede the match. Great lead in the next match, Tentacruel leading into Talonflame, but a save switch Quagsire will prove to be problematic for this team. In comes Shadow Timber, but I imagine Timber is not going to do well here. Quagsire is insanely efficient. Quagsire is able to spam out charge attacks with lightning fast pacing, and Aqua Tail does do quite a lot. Even with the Brick Break, the low kick's not doing a whole lot of damage. Timber will put up the shield, gonna try and go for a one shield farm down. This is gonna be close, but the Quagsire hangs on, 1 HP remaining, and unfortunately, Timber has forced to give up both of its shields. Now the Talonflame is in prime position to sweep. Timber gonna fire off the Rock Tomb. Shield should come up from the Talonflame here. Rock Tomb takes the one-hit KO. Opponent didn't respect it. They instantly top left. All seemed lost for a moment, but they did not respect Timber, and that cost them everything. Great lead in the next match. Tentacruel into Florges. Opponent save switches into Primeape, and this could get a little bit tricky. Tentacruel gonna stay in and fire off the Scald, but if Primeape ends up putting up the shield, then a switch will have to occur. And a switch does happen. Shadow Primeape into the regular. Primeape gonna get shredded by a boosted Rage Fist, so the shield will come up. Primeape gonna look to farm up to the close combat, just gonna go for the Rage Fist. The opponent has already taken quite a lot of damage throughout the course of this match. Rage Fist will be shielded. Opponent going all shields down, but now if they end up saving the Primeape and pivoting back into Florges, Florges is gonna take huge boosted damage. Like, this boosted close combat is going to be deadly. Florges, I don't know if it can even survive. It barely survives deep into the red HP as back in comes the Tentacruel. Tentacruel not going to be too worried about a Trailblaze. That doesn't do a lot, but this sets up monster farm for the Tenta. Now Tenta exits with a charge stack loaded, and in the back they have Diggersby. And it's bad news for the Diggersby, because Shadow Timber is in a prime position to close out this game. It's crazy that I've said that sentence multiple times in this video. That's a sentence I never thought I'd ever say. We see Shadow Timber actually doing things in the Great League. Timber is going to hit the field, has to take a charge attack from the Diggersby. Scorching Sands is going to inflict huge damage onto the Timber, and back in comes Primeape. There's the switch into the mirror, and with the health advantage, that forces the opponent to throw energy. Rage Fist will take the knockout, but the damage is done. Timber gets the farm down, exiting with the Brick Break loaded, and this Shadow Brick Break should be game winning. Brick Break connects, Diggersby gets KO'd, and Shadow Timber going on a bit of a run. Its same leads in the next match, Tentacruel into Florges. Opponent save switches into Primeape, and this honestly feels like deja vu. Is this the exact same battle? If this isn't the same battle as before, then I guess there's just a pretty popular team comp that is Florges plus Primeape. Primeape's gonna have to put up the shield. Scald will do way too much damage, and there's the switch, Shadow Primeape into the regular. This is going to have to be shielded. The opponent has already boosted up their attack. Now they're at +2. Primeape doesn't build up to the close combat, so this is actually a different battle. In the previous battle, the Primeape built up to the close combat before baiting. So these are actually two separate opponents, just playing very similar teams in a very similar way. And no pivot out this time. They're just going to stay in and get farmed down. And that is just way too much energy to give to a Shadow Primeape. This is a boosted Shadow Primeape as well. Close combat connects, and that damage is deadly. In comes Tentacruel. It's Diggersby in the back. And I have to know who made the video, because unfortunately, all they did by making that video is just set up a lot of trainers to get RPS'd by a Shadow Timber. Timber taking that Scorching Sands like a champ, returning fire with a Brick Break. Brick Break connects, getting that debuff as well, and Timber is going to be winning that charge stack priority tie. Timber going for an undercharge here, not looking to take the knockout. Unfortunately, still does take the KO. Florges gets a full farm down. Florges has a ton of energy, but Florges would need to make back-to-back Trailblazes to win the game, and the Acid that just snuck through should take the knockout. Oh, they're actually not on Trailblaze, they're on Disarming Voice, but either way, that's going to be a win. We finally see a non-Florges lead, Tentacruel into Gourgeist. Save switch in a Charge-a-Bug, and this could be a very big problem. Charge-a-Bug going to be answered with the Shadow Timber. Timber does have access to Rock Tomb. Charge-a-Bug will go for the discharge. Unfortunately, Timber unable to make the Rock Tomb, and Timber is going to be forced to put up the shield. Hopefully, the opponent just does not respect Timber and assumes that this trainer is tanking. Timber, unfortunately, does mistime the charge stack there, so the full Volt Switch does go through, but they don't shield, and Rock Tomb takes the KO. In comes Gourgeist. Unfortunately, Timber only able to make the Brick Break here. Brick Break not going to be shielded, and the Incinerate was survived, so they get a 2 Incinerate head start. This is looking like a very difficult game to win. The Tentacruel does have a lot of energy, but this is still going to be difficult. Well, it's not going to be difficult anymore. They end up calling the bait. They get destroyed by a payback. Gourgeist loses 60 energy, and it's Morpeko in the back. And now Shadow Primeape can just boost up, farm through the Morpeko. 2-shield Morpeko, a very scary Pokemon, but in this case, it went very wrong. Great lead in the next match, Tentacruel into Carbink, but the Malamar save switch is going to prove to be a very big issue. This entire team, as we identified earlier, takes super effective from Psychic, so Psywave is a very, very big problem. Tentacruel will grab a shield with Scald, but now it's going to be up to Shadow Primeape, even though it's getting shredded, absolutely torn to smithereens by these debuffed Psywaves, to try and secure the knockout onto the Malamar. That Scald debuff was massive, because these Psywaves are doing a lot of damage. They would be hitting even harder without that debuff. Rage Fist will be shielded. Oh, very nice catch from the opponent. They're able to save the Malamar and pivot back into the Carbink. Can Carbink get the farm down before the close combat is reached? It's going to be close. They will get the farm down. Unfortunately, Primeape is forced to just settle for the Rage Fist. Oh, they actually could have made it to the close combat. That is unfortunate. But the good news is the threat of a Scald will force energy out of the Carbink. Could this set up a generational farm down for the Timber? Timber is going to be brought onto the field of play. Timber can't quite get the farm down. Instead, just going to play to the CMP tie here, denying Carbink's energy with the Brick Break. The Brick Break will take the KO. In the back is Galarian Moltres. And we know they have no ability to stop what comes next. Shadow Timber farming up, going for the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb connects. They survive. There's the pivot into the Malamar, but it's too little, too late. Timber makes the Brick Break, takes the knockout. All that's left is the Moltres. Moltres gets farmed down. And man, I remember the time of my life watching Shadow Timber destroy teams. Unfortunately, that could come to an end in the final match, as that is a very rough lead, leading Tentacruel into Magnezone. A safe switch Shadow Primeape is answered with Altaria, and the Altaria does not respect the potential Ice Punch. That is really not ideal for the Primeape. Primeape's going to put up the shield. Primeape would love nothing more than Altaria putting up both shields here. Primeape going to farm up, going for the boosted close combat. Is this enough to knock out Altaria? It is resisted, but it's single boosted. It takes the KO. Shadow Primeape, what a monster. In comes Magnezone, but Magnezone's going to have to give up a shield, as Primeape's already at close combat number 2. In comes Timber. The low kick's adding up quite a bit. Timber going to respect the wild charge. Will the opponent full send? No, they go for a mirror shot bait, but they pivot out into Feraligatr. Insta debuff applied by the Timber as it fires off the Brick Break. Brick Break, no shielded, and that damage is monstrous. Now Tentacruel gets a full farm down. However, I feel like the Magnezone can probably take home this win. If Magnezone overfarms properly or just gets the full farm down here, then things could get a little bit uncomfortable. Back in comes the Magnezone. Tentacruel will fire off the Scald. Switch timer not yet available. Scald does not get the debuff, but Tentacruel could have made a move. That forces energy out of the Magnezone. Does Magnezone have the wild charge banked here? They do not. Timber farms down, and Timber takes the win. Timber cannot be stopped. Hopping to the final match, it's Tentacruel into Talonflame one final time. Tentacruel being able to outpace here is quite nice, but Tentacruel actually doesn't throw the energy. Instead, Tentacruel is going to be no shielding. Talonflame just going to go for a fly, and now Tentacruel will look to connect with the Scald. Honestly, Tentacruel just taking shield advantage would work pretty nicely, because we've seen what Shadow Primeape can do up a shield. Tentacruel going to be hit with another charge attack. No, actually going to invest in the Tentacruel, recognizing that if the opponent's staying, that they could very well be core broken by the Tenta. Scald number 2 launched by Tentacruel. Will Talonflame go for the double shield? Yes, they will. The Scald debuff comes through. They're forced to fire off energy, and you definitely can't shield this with 2 Shadow Fighters in the back, so that's going to be no shielded. In comes Shadow Primeape. Shadow Primeape just going to go for the CMP tie. Opponent doesn't throw their energy, but Primeape still gets to get itself boosted. So now this is a +1 Primeape with a shield. In comes Azumarill, and this is exactly where this team wants to see Azumarill. Shadow Primeape getting closer and closer to the boosted close combats. Shield comes up on the Ice Beam, and Primeape is now there. These close combats should be able to pick up the 2-hit KO, and then it all comes down to Timber having to win the 1v1 in the back. Primeape going for a second close combat. This close combat into Azumarill does not take the knockout. Timber gonna be answered with a Furret, and that is the best case scenario. The opponent weak to fighting in the back. Azumarill actually survived the close combat. I am shocked. But the good news is they pivoted into Furret. They trusted Furret would take home the win, but Timber gets the low kick down. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. These were some of the most fun battles I have seen all season, so many thanks to Neo for the battle submission. Now, it goes without saying, if you care about your elo, if you're looking to make a legend push, try and rank up during this week of Open Grade League, should you use Shadow Timber? Absolutely not. But it is a very fun Pokemon that has a surprisingly competent moveset suddenly. Timber has been the beneficiary of a lot of moves improving over time, with Low Kick getting the big buff, Brick Break getting improved, Rock Tube getting improved. It's one of these Pokemon that is stealthily under the radar gotten a very solid moveset. Now, its lack of bulk and the fact that it doesn't do a ton of damage against things that have a fighting resistance mean that it's not going to be a meta Pokemon by any means, but I really like to see trainers once they hit Legend, you know, having some fun, blowing off some steam, and absolutely shredding leaderboard elo with a Pokemon as spicy as Shadow Timber. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, please do help support the channel by leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated, so thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.